The mind is such a powerful tool, and yet many of us live in the belief that we are in control of our thoughts and our emotions, and that most of the decisions we make are conscious ones, and that is why we are or are not successful. In today's episode, I want to explore this concept, both coming from a position as a doctor with some experience in neurology and psychiatry, but also and mainly from experiences from reading books on the subject, and mainly to do with mindset within business, but also on coaching programs and recent experiences both in my own coaching, as in me coaching clients, but also being coached as well. And all of these things have come together to a point where I feel I'm ready to share some of what I've learned over the decades that I've been interested in this subject and have been applying it to my own life, sometimes with success, sometimes with not, but getting more into the realms of success on a yearly basis. And today I want to really go into this with a subject matter which is close to my heart, which is about systemizing businesses. But what I'm going to talk about today and the concepts apply to any goal or aspiration or anything you're trying to achieve, both in business but also in life, whether that be creating systems to free your time or anything else for that matter. So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us, who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name's Dr. Steve Day, and this is Systemize Your Success. So for the first 15 years or so of running my businesses, I believed that the only way to win was just to outwork everybody else. I lived with a badge of honor, one could say, for working long hours and mastering every possible skill. I was the carpenter, the electrician, the plumber, the developer in general of my properties. I did the bookkeeping, the management, the tenancy findings, the management of the tenants, everything you could imagine in my property business. And this was a similar scenario in every business I ever started. I can create websites, I can do programming, I've built funnels, I could do CRMs, I could do automations, I could do all the apps and the copywriting and the imagery creation. I've learned Photoshop. Like every part of a business over the years, I've learned, because I believe that was the way that we got ahead. That by working harder, by mastering every skill, was how we would be successful as a business owner. I know now that I lacked insight to see that actually that habit of working hard was actually the reason that I was forced to work even harder. And in fact, it was an addiction to working and to the status that that gave me that I believe kept me trapped in that for so long. And this concept is explained and discussed at length in a book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, the book called Breaking the Habits of Being Yourself. And if you're interested in diving more into some of the concepts which I discuss in this episode, I would highly recommend that book, amongst the others that I'm going to mention. So in that book, he explains that we all get used to feeling certain ways, and we get used to having those emotions sort of living and swimming around in us on a daily basis. And then when we then change out that status quo, it can feel uncomfortable, and it can actually feel like a withdrawal, like you're withdrawing from a drug if you're an addict. And so these could be, constant feelings of guilt and anxiety and worries about money, the hours we work, or the confidence we have in our relationships. Even though some of these are negative, we can actually live with these for many, many years. And because we're living with them, they become the norm for us. So when we take those away, so for example, people that are particularly worried about always not having money, when they get money, they can actually feel anxious because part of the person that they are, their personality has been built on the fact that they were frugal people, or they always looked out for money. And so they often feel uncomfortable in the fact that their situation has changed. So often what happens as well, we can default back into our previous state, and therefore not just state of mind, but also physical state as well, and default back to something that's more familiar and comfortable, even if it is actually of a, from an outward perspective, a detrimental effect. And just to take the hours worked as an example, like most business owners, like I did, secretly or publicly, wear this badge of honor about how hard they work. And when they take time off, they can actually feel, as I did as well, going on holiday and things, anxious, guilty, restless. So when we do go on holiday, we often find that we use that time to focus on essential work, in inverted commas, that our otherwise chaotic schedule didn't allow us to do. Things like planning and strategy and goal setting, when actually that's actually the key work as a business owner we really should be trying to do all the time. So when we return back to work with our new list of aspirational plans for our business that we've come up with this when we had that, as again, in inverted commas, time off, but we quickly fall back into our old habits of being busy, of just getting our head down, and we're actually working harder than ever, and those aspirations and beliefs often don't come to fruition. Nothing's really changed. Nothing in our beliefs or behaviors has actually really been altered. And so how can we expect the results to really be any different? Now, to build a business that really truly gives us the lifestyle we desire and we feel that we actually deserve, we have to actually change those fundamental behaviors, those feelings and those emotions we've become comfortable with, that we're accustomed with, that we live with day in, day out. And to do this, I think we need to understand what behaviors and habits we have ingrained in ourselves over the decades of experience and conditioning and that internal rhetoric that we tell ourselves each and every day. And to look at that, let's just look at to understand the extent and impact of our past experiences on our current habits. It's worthwhile looking at how our minds and therefore our thoughts and ultimately our behaviors are built. So if we look at a really simple situation where we may believe we're acting with conscious thought, but still in reality our decisions and actions and ultimately the outcome are primarily determined by our programming. And by programming, I mean how the brain has been wired as a direct result of every experience, emotion, and recurring thought that we've previously had. To illustrate this, let's say there's a valuable opportunity that comes up and we decide that, or we're trying to decide whether or not we should go for it. Now, if we believed with 100% certainty that the outcome would be favorable and it would move us closer to our desired future lifestyle or whatever we desire in the future, then we jump on it. But the problem is 100% certainty is rarely, if ever, possible. There are many factors that are outside of our control in any situation, but even those in our control rely on us as individuals to take the actions necessary for a long enough time to make it come to fruition for actually the whole outcome to be positive. And here's where the problem starts. You see, most of us, me definitely, do not believe or do not have 100% belief in ourselves. And I would argue that nobody has 100% belief in themselves 100% of the time. So any course of action, no matter how guaranteed in theory, it relies on us. And if we don't trust ourselves 100% to deliver, we project a possible future failure of that outcome before it's even started, rather than one of success. And that projected less than ideal future, or that future of failure, it actually can influence the way we think, react, and act now in the present. And that directly impacts negatively the likelihood of that being a success. So our doubts and fears and failures now that we project into the future possible outcome will actually make our success even less likely. And it may be as subtle as, the tone of voice in a conversation betraying us, like meaning that we don't project that confidence to be able to affect others' beliefs in our conviction to the plan. It may negatively influence their confidence as a result, and in doing so, ultimately their commitment to helping us to achieve the dream or the outcome that we wanted to. Or it can be something really obvious, so the lack of the measurable steps that we're taking towards our desired result, not hitting our KPIs, or for example, you need to do social media or whatever it is, whatever X, Y, or Z you're trying to do, but a lack of confidence in the outcome causes us to find excuses for not taking the action by prioritizing the work which we are more familiar with or more comfortable with instead. So these behaviors and thoughts, they therefore directly result, these behaviors and thoughts that we have directly result how we process the world. And the way that we process the world is directly results of is a direct result, I should say, of every experience, feeling, and emotion we've experienced throughout our entire lifetime. You see, every time we act, think, or feel in a certain way, our brains are subtly rewired to making those actions, thinking those thoughts, or feeling those emotions easier the next time we do it. Now, I learned about this plasticity of the brain, about rewiring of the brain when I studied neurology and then psychiatry during my previous life as a doctor in the NHS. And then from an evolutionary perspective, this ability to, in effect, create instinctive behaviors and reflex sort of behaviors that act without conscious involvement makes a lot of sense. Like, we hone skills to get better at particular activities, to act on instinct and have quicker reactions. So this means, we can hunt better, we can dodge the tiger better, we can remove ourselves from dangerous situations by having that gut feeling before they even become life-threatening. All these are essential skills when you're a hunter-gatherer out on the plains. And this is how the 10,000 hour rule works. That is discussed by Malcolm Gladwell in his excellent book, Outliers, This is a Story of Success. Now, Malcolm, in that book, explains that if we want to get really good at something and it becomes sort of instinctive and habitual with us, that we need to do it for around 10,000 hours. And the reason for that is doing this creates new wiring or neural networks in the brain to allow us to do it without thinking, to use our subconscious mind to control our actions or thoughts to such an extent that we literally can do the thing with our eyes shut and even without thinking about it. For example, imagine someone throws a snowball at your face, or a young child, heaven forbid, and they will instinctively close their eyes to protect their vision, as their vision is fundamental to our survival in evolutionary terms. It requires no thought. People will do this from a very, very early age. Now, a few years later, we'll actually have developed instinctive reflexes to be able to dodge something thrown at us. So not only does it not hit our eyes, it just won't hit us at all. And then as we play and learn and develop our brains, some people become so adept at this, their reflexes will allow them to catch the ball without even thinking about it. Think about when a cricketer hits the ball and then the bowler manages to catch it. And that ball's traveling at a huge rate of velocity, but yet the instinctive reflex allows the bowler to put their hand up and catch the ball. Maybe there's a bit of conscious sort of direction, but a huge part of that movement, getting the hand in the region of that ball in the first place, that is done without any conscious thought. And so that is how incredible the brain is, actually rewiring and reprogramming itself throughout our life. So this is an incredibly helpful way, if you like, of mastering new skills or not getting hit by the cricket ball, for example. But it also has the effect of conditioning us to react and act in very predictable ways, even if those thoughts or actions are detrimental to our conscious desire to improve our lives. And a practical way to illustrate this would be to be mindful of your feelings throughout the rest of the day, to think about what your reactions, your opinions, your beliefs, your emotions are in your day-to-day activities. So when you go out today and you see someone you don't know, you've never seen them before, and you see them walking down the street towards you, for example, what do you feel about them? What do you think they will be like? How much do you trust them? Now, they may look really kind and warm and friendly to you, and that's lovely. Or you may feel threatened and anxious and scared and untrusting. Now, whether these emotions you're feeling for this person are positive or negative, these involuntary feelings are happening because you've had previous experiences that influence your internal reactions designed to protect you from danger or move you to safety. And the more often we experience those things, as we've just described, the more easily they come back to us. And this is involuntary, and it's driven by our brains, our nervous systems, and our hormones. Think about the fight or flight sort of mechanism, which I'm sure you're aware of. that when you have an obviously dangerous situation and our mind perceives a threat, it triggers our glands to pump adrenaline into our bloodstream. It heightens our awareness and our strength and our concentration. And I'm simplifying the effect, the process, but that's really the ultimate effect. And that exact same reaction can be triggered in modern day life through completely non-life-threatening situations. For example, public speaking, posting on social media, presenting in a business plans, to investors, or speaking with a potential business partner. At these times, it's our conditioning, our experiences, our past feelings, all these things that basically come together and cause us to have this physical, or first of all mental, but then physical state that causes us to stumble and stutter, or to shut down entirely, even though consciously we know that our success is hinging on this event, but yet, and we know that will actually give us a better quality of life, but because of these reactive, these instinctive reactions, to these environments, it can create completely undesirable results subconsciously, even though our conscious mind is fighting its hardest to actually overcome that, because we know deep down it's going to make us a success. So just to summarize what we've got covered so far. So our behaviors, our reactions, our actions are largely influenced by our internal wiring. And that's been laid down after decades and decades of experience and emotions. And obviously how many decades is determined by how old you are. And it's no wonder that changing these instinctive behaviors is incredibly difficult. And this is exactly what the Dalai Lama and Daniel Goleman discussed in his book, Destructive Emotions, which I read about 15 years ago or so. In that book, they just talk about that neuroscience has proven that we can actually rewire the human brain at any age. We can grow underused parts of the brain and create new neural pathways or new wiring that can change how we react externally and the emotions that we feel and experience. And I read the book, as I said, about 15 years ago, but it had a profound impact on me, and it was actually given to me by my mother. And it also helped me understand my own emotions at that age as well, and what I could potentially do about any of the destructive emotions that I found myself feeling. I remember discussing, if I remember correctly, it was, as I said, 15 years ago, but that if someone does not experience love or compassion or warmth through their childhood, it can negatively impact the development of those areas of the brain that are responsible for being able to express emotion around love, and also to accept love and compassion as well. However, given the right stimuli, given the right encouragement and warmth and love over a period of time, it can be shown that those parts of the brain responsible for these emotions can actually grow back, and therefore the person's ability to experience those again increases even in adulthood. And this has also been shown in other studies. For example, London taxi drivers going through what's called the knowledge exam to become a black cab driver. It's been shown their brains, the area of the brain that's involved with mapping out our surroundings, that grows at any age at which these people are doing this. So the brain will actually grow and shrink depending on how well we use it. It's just like a muscle, for a good analogy. So how does knowing all this, and why am I talking about all this now? How does it help you to create a business that serves you, provides you with a lifestyle that you feel you deserve, and has the greatest positive impact on the world? Well, I guess in essence, why am I talking about all this in relation to business systems? So here's the thing. By the fact you're listening to the Systemize Your Success podcast, I'm going to assume that at some level you are interested in how systemizing your business will benefit you. And I'm also going to assume that you have some level of belief that a more systemized business will give you more time, allow you to grow your business, serve your clients better, and ultimately create a better future for you and even for the rest of the world. And if my assumptions are correct, then why haven't you dedicated the time and effort needed to build a systemized business and do all those things? Now, there's lots of reasons you could probably give me as to why not. So I'm going to cover a few of the main ones I hear. And we'll talk about them in relation to what we've just been discussing with regards to the brain and how we are pre-programmed to think in certain ways and what we can actually do about that. So is it because, and this, just before I start, this could be for anything. It doesn't need to just be about systemizing your business. Whatever the goal or the challenge you're trying to overcome, why haven't you fixed that yet? And it can be, there's the common reasons for each of the, or any problem really in business or in life. But let's just cover a few here as examples. So is it because you just don't know how? And I would argue that you didn't know how to do any part of your business before you did. And then you learned it through trial and error or through coaching or through reading books or whatever. And you learn how to do it. So obviously you're intelligent enough to start and run a business. So it stands to reason that given the right guidance and a bit of time and given your attention, you could, in theory, learn the skills required to build simple systems that allow other people to do your work for you to a high standard without your involvement, or even technology, or even AI. These things are all there, easy to access and easy to use and very, very affordable. So I don't believe it's as simple as not knowing how, because I believe that you can learn this stuff. I know you can learn this stuff because I know I've seen it so many times, and I'm no different from anybody else. I learned it from need because of my struggles in life. I needed to be systemized to be able to cope, and that's what my driving factor to this was. It wasn't because I'm any different or any more intelligent, I don't think, from anybody else. It's just the fact that I had a big reason why. I'll come to that in a minute. So I don't believe it's simple as you just don't know how. And another reason that people talk about they're not doing it or they haven't done it, whatever it is that you haven't got time. So I would argue here we all have the same amount of time. We have the same amount of hours in the day, for a cliche phrase. But despite what we tell ourselves, we generally speaking all share similar struggles and similar problems in life and business as well. Because we can always say, I haven't got time and this is happening in my life right now, or I'm going through this problem with a partner, I've got kids, I'm struggling with my health, I've got a bad back, whatever it is, I've experienced all these things. And so is the next person. So there's always a reason why. And we can all feel at times, actually most of the time, that we haven't got enough time to do it all. And actually, we haven't got enough time to do it all. That's why we need systems, but that's another thing to come to. So we have a choice though, and we have a choice about what we do with our time. So if we watch TV, play video games, follow sports or play sports, if we read the news, engage in social media, read books, exercise, spend time with friends, go shopping, carry out hobbies or interests, go to coaching, listening to podcasts or webinars, or pursuing whatever ideas or possibilities you want to inside and outside work, we all have choices about where we spend our time. So I don't think actually time is not the issues here, because as I said, we all have a stretched amount of, or we always have not enough time. We always feel like we have other challenges going on that are pulling us in different directions, whether, as I said, it's family, health, or whatever. And it's really what we choose to do with the time that we do have at our disposal, which is the main factor. And with systems particularly, the irony, if that's the right word, is that actually systems are the one thing that will give you more time than anything else you could possibly do in business and in life. In fact, freeing people's time or freeing their time is the number one goal that people have coming onto our coaching programs. And in fact, our foundation course is called Free Your Time for that very reason. So I believe that you already know, just by the virtue that you're here today, that when properly implemented, systems will free your time. That's why you're here. That's why you're listening to this podcast. So the question is, why haven't you prioritized creating systems over any other the dozens of activities you could do this week? And again, if it was simply a case of just focus or something simple, I believe you would have already mastered this essential skill. Another common reason for not getting started again with anything, but especially with business, from my experience with systems, is lack of money. And that the business needs to get to a certain level, or you personally to get to a certain level before it makes sense to invest in systems or whatever the thing you're talking about investing in. And again, I would argue that creating time-saving systems costs you nothing. In fact, I did it in my business, I had no staff for nearly 15 years or so, or 12, 13 years before I got any staff at all. And because I had a terrible memory, as I said, because I had some failings, because I struggle with attention, because I lose track of things really easily because of my ADHD, I focused massively on creating dozens of systems to help me personally remember how to do my work. And then as I refined these systems and iterated them over the years, I became more efficient. They became more sophisticated. It saved me more time, even though I was the only one using them. But then when I could afford to get some help, then I had learned a skill. I documented loads of my systems, and it made it far easier to get people to quickly take over the work that I had been doing in a way that got it done to a high standard without my involvement, because I'd been building these systems that had cost me nothing to build except for my time. But as I say, the skills that I learned had paid me back dividends over the years. So I don't believe it's anything to do with knowledge, time, or money, and I believe it's to do with you. And what I mean by that is everything I previously discussed. It's not a judgment, it's just a reality. That you think you are, if you like, is actually hugely determined by your pre-programming. It's a product of decades of conditioning, of hardwiring your beliefs, your habits, your behaviors, of building a model of the world that you understand and are comfortable with. Now, when someone suggests that model may be wrong or askew or missing something, like me saying, anyone can learn to create systems, that you have all the time you need to do this, and it doesn't require any money to get started, that may be or probably be in direct contradiction to a part of or all of the version of the world that you have been unconsciously constructing since the day you were born. And just to be clear, this isn't a judgment on this. This isn't trying to say your version or way you perceive the world is in any which way wrong. It's just different from mine because I've had different experiences. And therefore, I have seen a different possibility with this particular thing called systems. You could probably share something that you are passionate about in the same way that I wouldn't understand or I would have my doubts about. So this is just about understanding that the way we see the world isn't the only way in which the world is perceived when you look at the population as a whole. Now, in the same way, I could be saying things to you like, you shouldn't be working so hard, or you need to learn to let go and to trust other people, or that systems are the only way for you to be successful. And I believe these things, like absolutely wholeheartedly believe these things. And these may be in conflict with your existing beliefs. And therefore, if they're in conflict, the likelihood of you dedicating enough time and energy to be successful with building a systemized business is small. Even if you do think it's probably the right way to go, and you've seen, it's probably gonna work. But unless you really truly believe it, it's gonna be more challenging for you to be successful. And this doubt in your ability to be successful, that you have already, as we discussed before, you've already projected this likely future outcome, this likely failure future outcome of not being successful, and that reinforces that the belief you can't do it, and that you don't have enough time, and that you don't have enough funds. So it's this vicious circle that we get back into, which is driven by the emotions, the hormones, everything that is released when we think about things that we don't either understand fully, or we haven't experienced, or we don't believe in fully, or we don't trust completely. If we haven't experienced it, and there's an element of fear there, of uncertainty, of unknown, it can create these emotional barriers to us actually taking action. As I said before, if success was 100% guaranteed, you wouldn't hesitate, and you would have probably already mastered systemizing your business, and you wouldn't need to be listening to this podcast. So the question remains, how do we change our beliefs in order to change our habits, our behaviors, and ultimately change our lives? And as I mentioned earlier, I believe it comes down to belief. Do you believe that taking the required steps will give you the desired result? And do you believe that you will do the work required to get there? Both those things are essential for you to be able to project into the future a result of, or a projection of, a successful outcome from whatever the activity you are going to undertake. Now, I was listening to an interview with Melinda French Gates and on Conan O'Brien's podcast recently, and they were talking about the importance of role models for empowering women in Africa and around the world, and helping them to lead more independent lives. And they talked about the importance of these women seeing examples of other similar women who had achieved success. These role models seemed pivotal, in the women's belief that of what was actually possible, and therefore their chance of actually succeeding. Now, in my own business, if I look at my most successful clients, by those I mean that those have created time, location, and financial freedom. They've removed themselves almost completely from the day-to-day running of their businesses, or they have grown significantly while also enjoying a better quality of life at the same time. That's what I mean by success, because that's how we generally determine it. And these clients that I'm going to discuss here, they include solopreneurs, professional services, bricks and mortar businesses, and in both established service-based businesses and also virtual businesses, really covering the wide range of industries. And there's really 5 common traits that I've seen in our most successful clients. And firstly, most of them had a clear vision of what their lives would be like after they'd achieved the result, after they'd, in this case, systemized their business, what their new life would look like, and they were clear on that. Some of them already had some proven success with systems. So either they'd attended a coaching program with us earlier and had come back to me years later, or a different coaching program with a different coach, or they'd just done it on their own through learning and development, or maybe some skills that they already had from a previous life. All of them had had some success with other coaches in other areas of their business as well. So whether that's with their business planning or their marketing or whatever. So they had belief that coaches worked. So again, all of these things help to increase that belief of what the outcome and the chance of outcome, what the outcome would look like for them. And those things were sort of common, but the biggest by far factors of determining whether someone would be successful or not was the person either referred or recommended by someone that they knew and already had trust in, who had benefited massively from working directly with us or me, or had that person followed me for years and seen me go through the transformation myself from being a very overworked, busy, to trying to do everything property guy to being the person I am today with more free time, living a lifestyle of my design. If they'd been through that, obviously they'd witness that transformation in me, so that their trust was already there. And just like with Melinda Gates, these real life, genuine success stories in people that they already knew, liked, and trust enabled them to quickly overcome the innate conditioned fears and to start rewriting that internal programming and trust that the result was not only possible, but also probable if they followed the same plan. Now, I've got dozens of amazing case studies that I share with people. It's on my website, etc. And these are inspiring and they can actually get people just to sign up. But because the potential client we're talking about, if they don't know that person personally, there's no transference of trust in the same way that if someone you know, like, and trust gives you a real recommendation. This is someone you should, really go for. I've worked with them, they're brilliant. Like, that is when you get that massive transference of trust and you start actually thinking about that person differently, even though you don't know them. And so those people that get inspired by the case studies may sign up, but their chances of high success are nowhere near as great as those that have been referred to us. What I believe this tells us is that people who have a strong belief in either their innate ability to achieve the goal that they've set out to in life, or their ability to actually accomplish the thing they are setting out to do, in the person that they are getting to coach them or train them or guide them through the process, or just in coach them in general, if there is a coaching element involved, or in education, or however they're learning it. If they have a belief, it can start or make a big headway to overcoming these preconditioned fears of failure, of doubt, of uncertainty, which otherwise unchecked can lead to us going into that fight or flight mechanism, that fear, that protective mechanism that our ancestors have evolved in order to stay alive. And that in itself can lead us to project that fear of failure into the future, in which affects then how we act, the way we react to things, our emotions about certain things, our belief or trust in people. All of these things are negatively impacted if we don't have certainty in the future. So the more things we can put into place to create a vision of certainty, of belief, then it is much more likely that it will positively affect the way we react and act and our emotions in response to stimuli throughout the process of going through it. So when things get hard, if you actually believe that the chance of success is high, your likelihood of fighting through that challenge, of overcoming the obstacle, are far greater than if you've got these lingering doubts in the back of your mind. And I'm sure you've been there, as I have. When you're going through a program, a training, and you just quit halfway through, or a third of the way through, or 75% of the way through, which is even worse, because you hit an obstacle and because you're not absolutely sure if it's really worth the effort, if you're actually going to get the result, then you can actually fall back to that area of comfort and security by going back to the way things were before. You end up wasting time, you waste money. Yeah, you may learn something along the way, but you don't get the benefits of actually going the full course and actually implementing whatever it is you're studying, learning, or actually trying to achieve. And it's only when we have this absolute confidence in the outcome through all the things I've described here that we will fully engage in the process, that we will overcome all our fears and doubts and worries, that we will be able to reprogram the way we are feeling in certain situations, that we will trust in the person or the process that we're going through without doubting it, without questioning it. So when things do get hard, we do continue. And in those circumstances, when we have that belief, when we have that conviction, we will be truly successful, both in business, but in life as well. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. If you found this episode useful, I would love to hear your thoughts. You can leave a review on your favorite podcast app or email me at steve@systems-and-outsourcing.com, steve@systems-and-outsourcing.com. And I'll promise to reply to any emails I receive. I'd love to hear if you'd like me to go more into depth into similar topics and to spend a bit of time exploring more around the mindset, about the beliefs, about vision, about strategy, about mission, and all these areas of business which I'm fascinated with, and truly believe that these are the reasons that some people are massively successful while others just continue in the same old for years and years and eventually end up burning out or failing because they don't have this absolute belief and conviction which allows them to take the bold steps and actions needed to be successful in business. And if you're interested in reading any of the books I mentioned in today's episode, head to our show notes on www.systemizeyoursuccess.com. Find the show notes page for this episode, and on there you'll find a list of all the books I discussed in this episode. Until next time, many thanks for listening. Goodbye.